Welcome. I'm Steve Winnick of the American Folklife Center at the Library of Congress. And for the past many years, we've been doing a concert series called Homegrown. And during the pandemic of 2020, we had to retool to do Homegrown at home. We asked musicians to record videos of themselves and submit them for our concert series. So we are now in the second year of the Homegrown at Home concert series. And in this year, one of the acts that we were delighted to present was the duo of Jody Stecker and Kate Brislin. One of the things that we have done is to try to present artists who either don't tour as much as they used to or live very far away from us, because we can do that in the virtual realm more easily than in real life. And so we brought in Jody and Kate. So Jody Stecker and Kate Brislin, welcome to the interview that goes along with your Homegrown at Home concert.
Thank you very much. We're very pleased to be here.
We are so happy to have you. And I guess what we'll do is, since you have separate careers, which then at some point join together, we'll ask you about early days individually. So we'll start with Kate and just ask, the usual question of how did you first get involved with music?
Well, I grew up in a musical family. We always had a piano. And even as a little kid, I would go over and make little two-finger chords, and play a little melody.
What you can't see is her hand. She's going like this right now.
Because I liked music and I had all these little records that I would play constantly of sort of, I guess, mostly country cowboy music in those days. And then my dad had a ukulele and he taught me how to play it, and he got me my own ukulele. And then later I got it in high school. I got a guitar and just had friends that could show me how to play it. So I grew up with piano and guitar and singing. My whole family sang. I was in choirs and so forth. So I was always doing music of some kind or other. And when the folk revival happened, I really got into that music and wanted to learn how to play it. And eventually learned, I got really hooked on the banjo, the sound of the banjo. And I had somebody teach me how to play the banjo. And to make a long story short, although it might be too late for that, I joined the San Francisco Folk Music Club. And that was the beginning of a whole career path, because I met people there that then asked me to be in bands. And I was in my first band before I was 30. And we toured. We made an album. We toured a couple of times across the states. The Arkansas Sheiks was the band. And then we made an album. And then from there, I left that band and formed the Any Old Time String Band with fellow girlfriends, Susie Thompson, who was Susie Rothfield in those days, and Valerie Mendel, Jenny Haley, and Sue Drawheim. We toured a lot. We recorded 2 albums. And then when Susie and Valerie left, that kind of fell apart. And I formed a band with just Susie and her husband and another fellow. So Susie Thompson, Eric Thompson, Alan Sanaki, and me were the Blue Flame String Band, and we toured a whole lot, and we made an album on Flying Fish.
Nice.
And and then I left the band. I was just getting road weary. I really don't like touring a whole lot, being away from home, and anyway. So I sort of stopped doing performing for a number of years in the mid 80s. But I had gotten together as a couple with Jody, and we always sang together. I mean, he'd invited me to sing on both of his albums, and I would perform as guest with him. And so then we started being a duet in the mid to late 80s, and Rounder put out our first duet album, and made 7 more albums.
Great. And one of the things that is a little unusual about your experience back in those days was being in, as you described, a string band that was for women, so an all-woman string band. Was that did did you find a particular niche that way within the folk scene?
You know, we didn't do it deliberately. We were just friends and we were getting together a lot. And it just happened because, like most bands, you know, what male or female, I mean,
Yeah.
it just was friends who got together and loved to sing together and play together. And then people started making a big deal out of that
Yeah.
we were all women and we're kind of looking at each other. Oh, yeah. You know?
Can I comment during questions for Kate?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Please
you
do.
know, one thing about that band is that they all looked and behaved really differently than each other. So it was watching it was quite an experience.
Hmm.
I mean, one of them was very still, one was very active, one was cross-eyed, one of them was nuts, and it was just and then there was Kate with a rose in her hair. Another thing about that band is that
It was 5 of us, actually.
yeah, and there was a bunch of changes of bass players over the years and changes of fiddle players, but
Hmm.
they could all sing. I mean,
Yeah.
really, they really could sing. And you know, later on, when it became more of a big deal that it's this all-female old-time string bands, probably in other parts of the country, it was a big deal. Not so much in California, where it was like Kate says, no, we didn't. Everyone didn't even notice. It was
Right.
like, you're a good musician, okay, fine.
Great.
But they, you know, the later bands, I mean, the singing I thought was comparatively weak. But
Not my later bands. You
no,
mean other
I'm
later
talking about later, you know, like when it was
Right.
a big deal about female bands,
Yeah.
they could play, but they could sing.
Mhm.
Everybody could sing, 5 singers. Yeah.
In any old time,
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a lot of fun. We did a real eclectic mix. We did some Memphis Minnie, some Bessie Smith, some Cajun stuff, novelty songs, and old time and bluegrass. You know.
Well, I mean that kind of opens up another question of how did you decide what your musical style was going to be in those days?
It was each of us contributing something we really loved, and there was nobody, none of us were saying no, we can't do that. We were all just saying, okay, let's try that. So, and it was really fun. I mean, I had the most fun in that band just because of the eclectic repertoire.
Yeah.
You're always
Sounds fun.
moving. Yeah.
All right. So you mentioned that eventually you ended up hooking up with Jody as a duo or duet. So let's backtrack to Jody's early days, and then we'll pick it up when you guys joined together. So Jody, you were not from the West Coast, if I'm not mistaken.
I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and spent my first 20 years or so there.
Uh-huh. And how, did you? I assume you got into music while there on the New York side of things.
Yeah. First of all, I mean, there was fantastic radio,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, including WWVA and WCKY. So I heard, and there was a station in New Jersey whose call letters I forget right now, but the DJ was Don Larkin. This is
Mhm.
Larkin Barkin, he would say.
Yeah.
At that point, bluegrass music was part of country music, and so every fourth record was what we would now call bluegrass. And my family sang. My mother's sister used to sing with the group of friends that eventually got whittled down to become the Weavers.
Mm-hmm.
She was, you know, she and Ronnie Gilbert and another friend of theirs. They used to, you know, the three of them sing. So there, you know, was a connection with what was called folk music
Mm-hmm.
as well. My grandfather knew some songs from Russia. This was all happening. I had several relatives who played mandolin. At least 3. And I was given a mandolin by a great aunt when I was 12.
Nice.
I had already been playing my mother's guitar, so when I was about 11. And we had the Brooklyn Public Library, which had really great collection of LPs. I live near the main branch.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to listen to all sorts of stuff. Then there was Washington Square. I could take the subway there. Sunday
Right.
afternoons, there was gatherings for a few hours, and I started going when I was 12,
Wow.
and I was accepted. You know, I don't know how good I was.
Right.
I think, probably no worse than anyone else. We're just banging away on our mandolins, guitars, and banjos, and singing whatever. So that was the beginning. I got more interested in what I was hearing on the radio, which was bluegrass, which was a young man's music at that time,
Hmm.
first generation. And from there, I got interested in the fiddle. And from there, I got interested in all these musics in the world that used the violin. And I started going back in time,
Right.
back to old time music, to all the things that contributed to bluegrass music, to blues, to gospel singing, banjo accompaniment to singing, and fiddle tunes, and all these things. I just kept going back. Eventually, I was studying the classical music of North India, which is 400 years back.
Right.
This is reminding me of a very, very unusual music camp I taught at for a few years. It's at the base of Mount Shasta in Northern California. And it takes place in a public park. And it's mostly, not entirely, but it's mostly an invitational. And the average age of the student is somewhere between 8 and 15. A lot of them are professionals now. But at any rate, there was the percussionist Roy Wooten, who known as Future Man.
Hmm.
So he was there teaching percussion. He's Future Man. And one of the banjo teachers was a Zen meditation teacher. So he must be Present Man.
Right.
So I said, you got Present Man is here and Future Man is here. Who's Past Man? And they all pointed at me. I got interested in old music.
Yeah.
Not because it was old, but because it sounded so good to me. It ain't broke, don't fix it was kind of my attitude.
Yeah. So what do you think is the common thread among all those musics? Like you said, the fiddle is one thing, the different things bows have been used for, but anything else sort of strike you as similar between the Indian music and the bluegrass and the old time?
Absolutely. And that's the sense of pitch,
Mm-hmm.
where according to Indian raga theory, there are 22 microtones to an octave. In practice, there's more like 40.
Mm-hmm.
And then, recently I started getting interested in Ottoman music, where I believe, I may have the number wrong, but I believe the whole step is divided into 9 sections, each with a name. So, gradations of pitch. So it's not, the pitch is not based on chord changes or on harmony, and it's not tempered like on a keyboard or what you would get on a fretted instrument. There's an alignment between what you play on an instrument and what gets sung.
Mm-hmm.
And what gets sung in what's called modal music is not dependent on harmony. So you have a lot of microtones, and I think this is the origin of this is the human brain rather than a cultural thing. I think everybody produces this. All cultures do. Anyway, in 1974, I was living in Redmond, Washington, which is now the home of Microsoft, but they had only 2 paved streets then. I was living on the far end of a horse pasture and playing in a band called Houseboat Music. One of the people lived in Seattle, Hank Bradley, wonderful musician. We got hired to play at Expo 74 in Spokane. And there I met Kate. She was in the Arkansas Sheiks, which once got billed as the Arkansas Sheep, by the way. Posters all over it.
Oops.
That was my favorite mistake.
we just took to each other, and I found there was nobody I'd ever met who was such a flexible singer who could sing with me. And not only did she have her own harmonic ideas, but she could sing things that I thought of that everyone else would go, huh? What do you mean? And she go, oh, okay. And she had a way of getting her voice to go with mine, finding a part of her voice that went with mine. Later on, I found out she does this with everybody. We just a few days ago, we did a unusual concert. Excuse me. Laurie Lewis, who lives in Berkeley, has a yearly gig at the Freight and Salvage, which is now a theater, used to be a coffee house. And it's always the Saturday after Thanksgiving. But she had an accident with her neck and she can't sing. Her voice is coming back. And she'll be fine. But she asked a bunch of friends if they'd be interested in singing one or two of her songs. So there was this amazing gathering of people singing some of her songs. And we did some. I'm trying to make a point and I've lost my way. Where
Did I sing well with Lori?
Yes, this is what this is reminding me that on Laurie's first LP, Kate is singing on the choruses, but she's not singing harmony for most of it. She's singing the lead. Laurie's doing the harmony. Nobody knows.
Interesting, yeah.
And I produced a duet album of Kate's a billion years ago, a duet with Katie Moffett. And it was called Sleepless Nights, and they did several Everly Brothers songs. I remember hearing from one DJ in Chattanooga who was saying they were getting requests to play some more of Donna and Phyllis. That was Katie. So nice. when I was mixing the album, again and again, I put my hand on the wrong fader, thinking it was Katie, and it was actually Kate. I mean, she has this way of getting her voice to go with whoever it is. I don't have this skill. I can modulate it from here to here. She's got this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the great thing is, as long as one of you has it, then it works in the duo, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Because I've heard other women sing with Jody, and it surprises me that it doesn't sound.
It's just not the
good.
same. It's good. It's not the same. She's got
Right.
this other skill. She'll play the same banjo, the same guitar, whatever it is that I'm playing, and the sound is better.
Oh, thank you.
It's something about the angle of her hand or how she does. I can't do it. And I think I sound pretty good, but I'm just the sound, she's got something. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you guys start performing together?
Kicking and screaming for her.
I was really, as I had said before, I was really tired of performing and being on the road. I just wanted to rest. And I had a little part-time day job that I kept for many, many, many years because I like the security of a steady income. And I just wasn't interested. And Jody just kept saying, well, let's do this, let's do this, let's do that. And then we got an offer to play at this little food place downtown. And
the soup and salad place.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Salmagundi's it's called.
Long gone. Yeah.
Long gone. But they wanted this music for the after work crowd. And that's where we started polishing up songs to be a duet. And
then we started getting requests for an album.
Right.
Why don't you record an album? So we put together something. We borrowed money. We borrowed $2,000, and which is all it took. This is 1987, and I went and listened to. Well, that was a little bit later. Never mind about picking an engineer, but we found a place to do it, and we sent around a cassette, which is what you did in those days, to different record companies, and we never heard from Rounder. And I happened to be on the phone one of the people there, and he said, "Well, yeah, I know we did receive it, but I lost it."
Oh.
Well, why did you tell me? So we sent it again, and Ken Irwin was one of the partners there at Rounder, and he and Hazel Dickens were a couple at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And Hazel said, "You got to sign them." She listened and she really liked it. We have to we owe that to her. So 2 years after recording it, they said, "Okay, we'll put this out." Now, a very interesting thing happened. Once we were on Rounder, we'd started sending around the cassette version. At that point it was LP and CD and cassette. All
Right.
all the different media, and cassette was cheaper, so we would send that around. We had previously sent the same cassette on metal tape, highest quality tape, to different gigs and festivals, and for most of them we said, "Oh, you just have to promise, call us again when you get better." So now we sent around the same recording on cheaper tape that it said Rounder on it. Now they said, "Wow, you've really improved. This is really, really good. You're hired." So again, we owe a lot to being on Rounder. For people without ears,
Yeah.
it did us a whole lot of good.
Yeah, it had a cachet finally.
Yeah.
Great. So, yeah. So essentially, as a duo, you had to sort of invent a repertoire. Come up with material that you were going to sing together.
Yeah. In the beginning, we were like any old time. We did anything we wanted. And then when we were actually competing for gigs rather than just pleasing ourselves, we quickly realized that we should focus on what we do best, that that there isn't competition, and that is singing together and playing plucked string instruments. So we dropped the fiddle because there were plenty of fiddlers who were better than me.
Mm-hmm.
and we mostly played two guitars, or guitar and mandolin, and we always included at least 2 or 3 things with banjos, sometimes 2 banjos. We really like playing 2 banjos, and we always do that locally. And when we toured, we would borrow banjos because we never did more than 2 banjo duets per show. It added a little sparkle and a little difference. Mm-hmm. And nobody was playing banjo duets. Nobody was focusing on mid-tempo or slow songs. And another thing that we dropped. We were doing some Scottish music. We were doing some Cajun music. We dropped all that. We just American music. Some newly written songs, but mostly traditional songs. It made it possible for those who give gigs and have radio shows and all the rest of the things to put us in a niche. We did not think that way ourselves.
Right.
But it made it possible to make a living at it to some extent.
Yeah, definitely.
We took inspiration from the Irish band Altan.
Mm-hmm.
We noticed what they did was, first of all, they presented themselves as people living now. They didn't dress in period clothing like, "Oh, we're playing 19th century music." No, we're right now. The music's viable. And what they did was mid-tempo and slow songs and fast instrumentals.
Mm-hmm.
Because Kate always felt uncomfortable singing real fast. She just said, "I feel silly," but not playing real fast. So to liven up the program, we put a few instrumentals in. We got that idea.
Interesting, yeah.
From Mairead and her crew.
Yeah, they were a great band. And actually, now that you say that, it hadn't occurred to me that, of course, when it's true of a lot of those Irish bands now, but Altan was one of the early ones to do this, that, there'd be a great singer who would sing mid-tempo to slow songs, and then the instrumentals would just take off and be, super fast. Yeah. So that's interesting
that worked for us.
Well, and it's nice for the audience, to have the varieties of tempos and something.
Yeah, and singing works well on those slower paces. So great.
Yeah. So a lot of decisions we made about what to focus on was purely a practical thing to how to get jobs.
Right.
The other kinds of music we played at home.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And
sometimes we'd play for dances, local dances.
Yeah, that got
We
old.
got to-
We did.
Yeah, it did. But we would play the Irish and Cape Breton
mhm.
music that we could play.
Yeah, Kate played piano on those.
Yeah.
Great. And that sort of reminds me, Jody, that one of the projects that you were involved with was with Alistair Fraser,
Yeah.
playing, accompanying his fiddle playing. So explain how that came about, because he was in the series last year as well. So,
Yeah.
I met Alistair after he'd been here only about a year. He lived in Sausalito, right across the bridge from San Francisco. We're near the Golden Gate Bridge. We're in that part of San Francisco. I think I met him in 1980. He was still in his 20s.
yeah.
We found it easy to play music together. And he had just discovered, and I had about the same time, a 19th century collection of tunes called the Athole Collection, Athole. And so I go over to his house in Sausalito, and he was like an incredible sight reader. Just he'd open the book and play it. But I go, this is an F. That must be a G, like that.
Right.
And so we started playing through that, and it just sounded so good with guitar and fiddle. And sometimes I played mandolin too. So let's make a record of this. But then the repertoire expanded from the stuff in that collection. Then we toured together. What was it? As long as 2 years?
Yeah, it was about 2 years. And I remember
87 through 89.
Yeah, you were in Scotland when we had the San Francisco earthquake in 89.
That's right.
That's how I always remember
Yeah.
when the earthquake was.
Oh, our car, I was touring with Alistair and his wife, Sally, in a VW, I think it was. It was a van of some sort, I don't know whose it was, and it broke down along the banks of Loch Ness. And we got towed to Inverness, where we found a B&B and spent a few days till we had a vehicle again.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being in the kitchen or the dining room, at breakfast, and was drinking a cup of coffee, and I could hear the radio from the kitchen. Blah, 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 blah. The entire city of San Francisco was decimated today. No buildings are left standing. I went running into the kitchen. What? And then the European TV didn't understand at all. The first coverage was fans leaving a baseball game. And a lot of them had brought their bats to be signed by their favorite players. And this was interpreted as gangs of thugs are roaming the streets of San Francisco armed with clubs, and they're breaking windows and stealing everything. And the truth was, when I got back here and I found out what it is, people would knock on each other's doors. Do you have power? Do you have water? Are you okay? It was not, again, must have been a theft or two, but
right.
No, it was quite neighborly.
Was that your experience being there, Kate, that it was neighborly, or?
Yeah, it was, it's interesting. I had left work before 5 o'clock, and the earthquake, I think, was 5 to 5. You remember these things after being reminded for years and years. And the elevator stopped, and when the doors opened, there was a fellow employee, a woman I knew who worked on our floor, and she had accidentally pushed up instead of down and gone up, and so she was coming back down. Talk about guardian angels. And she said, "Oh, Kate, I've got my car today. Do you want to ride home?" And I said, "Sure." So we walked to her car. We're driving. We're almost out to our neighborhood when the car starts kind of rumbling and shaking, and she thought it was her kind of inferior spare tire because she was having her other tire fixed or something. But then there were no streetlights, and people started coming out of buildings. So I rolled down the window and I said, "Was that an earthquake?" And they go, "Yeah." So when I got home, there was hardly anything wrong in our apartment because the earthquake shook north south, and we live in an old Victorian, and all of our upper shelves in
In a room.
in any room, we have some
Yeah.
tall shelves.
Yeah.
The stuff just moved back and forth. It didn't
Right.
move toppling off, and so there was very little damage. But a friend of mine who lived in the city came and got me because she knew I was there alone, and we didn't have power. And so she came and got me. But I managed to phone Jody's mom and tell her where I was going. I'm going over to Gail's house. I'll be there for a day or two. Everything's okay here, but I'm going over there. So that meant that Jody's sister found out. And when Jody phoned his sister, because he kept phoning the house and nobody was answering,
Right.
he phoned his sister. And before he even said anything, she said, "Gail's."
She said, "Yeah, she's fine." It was 4 a.m. in Seattle when I called it. I'm going back
Yeah.
to sleep.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
guess I shouldn't have taken us into a tangent on the on the earthquake there. So to get back to music, we were talking about your duet with Alistair Fraser, which was
Yeah.
an interesting thing that you did. But one thing that interests me as well is, you've done several recording projects as a duo, which focus on the music of an individual predecessor.
Right.
So the Carter family was one of them. So explain the importance of the Carter family to yourselves, but also to American music to the extent that you can.
I will, if I may deviate again back to Scotland and Alistair.
Yeah, sure.
One thing, and I've never heard anybody mention this. Okay, everywhere we played, and we toured for 3 weeks there, a week in Ireland, 3 weeks in Scotland, playing many nights a week. Every gig was attended by at least 10, sometimes 30 fiddle players, and always one mandolin player. Everywhere in Scotland, there was a mandolin player. They wanted to try my mandolin. We play a little bit together, and they each had their own style. Because there's no regional style. There's nothing. It was all a personal thing. The mandolin players were all mavericks. I thought that was fantastic.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And during the earthquake, meanwhile, not all the bookcases and shelves remained stable. There was one of them that threw 300 pounds of books and the mandolin that my Aunt Gussie gave me when I was 12. The mandolin I learned on. Most of it landed on a bed, but it destroyed that mandolin.
Oh.
So I associate the earthquake and the tour with Alistair with mandolins.
Yeah.
Okay, the themed recordings. We just started noticing from others that the average listener or the average record buyer is interested in themes more than they are in performers. And Bruce Phillips, Utah Phillips, had asked us he had a dream that we were singing some songs of his that nobody had heard. And he wondered if that could really become a project. And, yeah. And we found out that he didn't write any songs. He made them up.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't use ink or a typewriter. He stored it all in his memory. So he wrote them out for us so we would know the words. And that got a very, very good response. And we said, "Oh, look at this." So, I don't know how we got onto songs of the Carter family.
Well, we just do so many of them. We thought, why not put them all, why not put ones we haven't recorded yet onto an album?
Yeah. And there was, in starting, I mean, was it 2002? When did I do the banjo duet with Bill Evans? 2003?
I don't remember.
Okay. Bill Evans is a versatile 5-string banjo player,
Yeah.
and he had a solo show, about the banjo, everything from an instrument made entirely of vegetables to a solid body electric banjo. And I mean, really, with vines for strings or and gourd body,
Right.
And we got into this banjo duet called "The Secret Life of Banjos," and I only owned one banjo at that time. Within 6 months, I had acquired about 10 banjos for not a lot of money. It was a need.
Yeah.
I don't have them now. I have some, but look, you have plenty, Jody. And I discovered that the attendance was higher for that than anything I had ever done before under my name and anything that Bill had ever done. And again, it was a theme, banjos, rather than the individuals. Unless, of course, you're a mega star. Then they don't care what you sing or play.
Right.
So this was part of it too. Like, okay, themes are a viable way to get people interested. And we don't have to change our music. We didn't do that. We just described it differently.
Right. Or you selected items that you already played, but you put them all together into one bin in a sense, or one
Exactly
album.
right.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I think Jody's right that what gave us the idea was having done the Utah Phillips album, one artist's compositions. And so that led to, let's do a Carter family theme, so it was good.
Certainly makes sense in the genre of music that you do, because you see their influence in old time and in bluegrass and in country music. So
Yeah, definitely. Big influence. Sometimes people don't realize that so many songs they're familiar with from bluegrass came from the Carter family.
Now, I think they actually invented a style of music in a way.
Mhm.
They really changed. They square things up. They put more emphasis on steady rhythm.
Yeah.
And harmonizing songs. They made things less squirrely than they were in a way. I mean, they tamed it in a way. Another thing is, I think they put more emphasis on the sound than on the meaning, because a lot of their songs are nonsense.
Yeah.
The pail and the leader and eyes look like blue. What's that? But it didn't matter, because that wasn't what their emphasis was. It was a sound and how it made you feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like them very much, especially like the younger Sarah's singing.
Mm-hmm.
Really beautiful.
And they're similarly eclectic to you as well, in the sense that, some of their songs are centuries old folk songs and others are whatever was popular at the time and they heard and put together. Yeah. Yeah. Very nice. So another sidelight that I wanted to ask Jody about, because it has a certain connection to our collections here at the Library of Congress, is the work that you did in the Bahamas that led to those Nonesuch albums. Could you explain that, the field work essentially that you did at that time?
Yeah, it's a very timely question, because I've just been in touch with Peter Siegel,
Good.
Who was on those recording trips.
Yeah.
On that one trip. Peter was involved in the Friends of Old Time Music, which put on concerts in New York City. He wasn't one of the founders, but he used to host musicians sometimes visiting people at his parents' house in Manhattan. And he had met Joseph Spence, the amazing guitar player from the Bahamas.
Yeah.
And his sister, Edith Pinder, who turned out to be a big influence on my singing. And he called me up in May or June 1965. He knew I was listening to the Folkways records that Sam Charters had recorded in the 1950s of singers from the Bahamas and Joseph Spence, the guitar
Right.
player, also. And he said, "You're the only person I know who knows about this music and likes this music. I mean, I really love that music." And he was trying to get started as a recording engineer. He was sort of a disciple or understudy almost of Ralph Rinzler.
Hmm.
He and David Grisman, there was two guys, they would carry a tape recorder around,
Right.
and record stuff because Ralph did that. This is when we're all teenagers, you understand.
Right.
At this point, Peter's 21, I'm 19 though. I want to go to the Bahamas and find some more of these singers who do this style they call rhyming. And I know how to find Joseph Spence because Elektra had just recorded one. How did this? Paul Rothschild and who had found him? The jug player with the Queskin band.
Fritz
Richmond.
Yeah.
So Fritz Richmond got sent down there, find Joseph Spence, and he gave Peter the directions. He said, "You go to Nassau, then you go over the hill to Culmersville and look for the city meat market that's kitty corner from the parochial school where the girls wear blue dresses. You'll find Joseph Spence there." And everywhere, so we went. And I had a $125 scholarship to buy books. I was at CCNY. I spent that on my plane tickets.
Hmm.
And first to Miami, and then to Nassau. And everybody had the same response when we asked about Joseph Spence. It was almost memorized. It was, "Shorman, I know Spence." Until we got to Culmersville, kitty corner from this, the city meat market and the school where the girl wore blue dresses, and they were protective. "Oh no, I'd never heard of him."
Right.
Joseph knows nobody here. Finally, this one woman came, was standing in her door. She said, "What do you want to find Spence for?" We said, "Well, we want to make a recording of him and record him and let the world hear him." And she said, "Oh, Spence will be so famous." And she pulled out one of the several kids who was hiding under her dresses, under her long skirt, and said, "Take him to Uncle Spence's house," which was next door. And he seemed to be expecting us. Well, why should we be surprised? Of course he was expecting us. These two white guys, who speak funny, are asking about him. Of course he knew we were coming.
Right.
And his first words were, "You like banana?" And he offered us each a banana from the tree in his backyard. And Louise cooked up some conch fritters, and we had a wonderful time. And we had no problem finding people. It was all very relatively easy to find really good singers.
Hmm.
I like the story of when you guys asked Spence.
Okay, so his wife was from Cat Island. He was originally from Andros.
Hmm.
And they had a little bit different musical tradition. And also Spence had been around Bristol, Virginia, Tennessee, there during World War II, because a lot of able-bodied men were off fighting and they needed people to bring in crops and to do different kinds of labor. And there he acquired some of the Vaughan hymnals from Lawrenceburg, Tennessee, which are shape note hymnals. And it turns out that on Cat Island, they use these hymnals also.
Hmm.
So there were these shape note hymnals, and he had them, and he was playing some songs from them. He said this one was called Crown and Harmony. One is called, I think, Harmony Heaven. I'm not sure about that, And he said, "Oh yeah, man, there's a lot of funny songs in that book. A lot of funny songs," which I later found out they were fun to play is what he meant.
Mm-hmm.
Lot of funny songs. So, well, let's hear one of them. He played this one. I said, "Oh, so you can read from the book?" "Oh no, I can't read." "Well, how did you learn? How did you learn these songs?" "I was talented." Absolutely precious. Just
What a
great.
charming man.
Yeah. Oh, he was. Oh, he was so
Really?
friendly. He
So
was
funny.
really, really great guy. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I had mentioned that there's a kind of a connection to our collections, which is that in the 1930s, Alan Lomax had gone and done recordings in the Bahamas, and you ended up getting some of the same songs.
And he must have been no older than we were.
That's right. He was about that same age. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
And those are fantastic recordings.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And one of those songs, of course, is "I Bid You Good Night," which your recording of it of Joseph Spence and the Pinder family, ended up sort of influencing a lot of people and ended up in the Incredible String Band and the uh, Grateful Dead repertoire. So was
Yeah,
what
I
was
taught
that
it to
like?
Jerry Garcia right after I got back from the Bahamas. That's how
Uh-huh.
they got it. They didn't get it from the record. They got it from Jerry.
Yeah.
Got it directly from me 2 weeks later after I first heard it.
That was one of the eclectic pieces that even Any Old Time picked up on. We used to do "I Bid You Good Night" at the close of our shows. It was really fun to do.
Yeah, great song, and yeah, everyone likes to put that at the end of at the close
Yeah.
of their shows because it's just a great way to
But we had 2 takes
sign
of
off.
it.
Uh-huh.
We,
Right.
and we included the first one on the Rounder release. It was called The Spring of '65.
Mm-hmm.
The second take was what came out on the Nunsuch records in the '60s. And the reason there were 2 is that the first take was just phenomenal. And an overenthusiastic neighbor, this was being recorded in the backyard of Edith Pinder's family. And so her husband Raymond is singing bass. She's singing the lead. Their daughter Geneva, who just passed away recently, maybe 90 years old, she was rocking her baby. There was a whole lot of kids and grandkids all around. And then all the neighbors looking over the fence and coming in. Well, an overenthusiastic neighbor kicked the mic stand. And so we had a big boom, in the middle. Well, we had, "Could you possibly sing that again?" Okay, they do it again. So they did it again. It was very good. That's the one most people heard, and at first. But then along comes digital sound editing. We could easily get out the noise. So we had put that one out. Plus we got a Bid You Good Night by at least one other, by some of the other singers, maybe 2, but they were not released.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was just a sort of amazing thing that you captured and an amazing trip, and especially at such a young age, it must have been sort of foundational for you as well, just to see what was out there.
That summer was, I think, Peter had suggested the name The Spring of '65 for that CD because it was a very significant year for him and for me. It's also the name of a ballad.
Mm-hmm.
I woke up one morning in the spring of '65. Found myself quite lucky to be found alive. How it starts.
Yeah.
And I never would have instigated this myself. I wouldn't know how. Peter was 2 years older. There's a difference between 21 and 19.
Mm-hmm.
And, so he started, the thing rolling, but you really needed 2 people, to carry the equipment and you have some company, as well. But that same summer, I then went to Mexico to help out one of my teachers at City College of New York, which was Henrietta Yurchenko.
Yeah.
She had been in the state of Michoacan in Mexico 20 years earlier, in the mid 40s, and had recorded a new tradition of songwriting. There were these young songwriters making music that was musically Spanish Mexican of some sort, but in the Purépecha language,
Mm-hmm.
which has more syllables than Spanish. So the music may seem to be in 3 or 4 time. Those are the 2 main rhythms. But there aren't 4 beats to a line. There are as many beats as there are until you have finished your phrase. So she wanted to see how this was happening, whether it was still vital 20 years later. And she ended up getting use of the same Nagra tape recorder that Peter and I had in the Bahamas. We didn't get to use it till a week into Mexico. We had a Uher that we used before that, which is good, but not as good. Me and Peter Gold, who is another student of hers, we got a Jeep and a driver donated by the Michoacan state government. She got a grant from the American Philosophical Society. See, I couldn't have done that stuff. I had
Right.
clue. I mean, one reason I've been a musician all my life is I just had no idea how to get a job. I knew how to make music, but that's what I knew. Apply for a grant? What?
So I'm really glad that you mentioned those Henrietta Yurchenko recordings,
Yeah, they got
because
released too. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that we have them, that the ones from 20 years before, not the ones that you did.
yeah.
That we have the ones from the 40s at the Library of Congress. The ones that you did, I think, they were released by Smithsonian Folkways, perhaps, or by Folkways at the time.
First, it was the more polished stuff, which was still pretty rough but beautiful, was released by Nunsuch, the Nunsuch Explorer series.
Right.
Same as the
Yeah.
Bahamas.
Yeah, same as the Bahamas.
It was called The Real Mexico, and the other one, ours was The Real Bahamas.
Right.
But then some of the more really vital stuff that was a little rough around the edges was released by Ash Folkways.
Mm-hmm.
It was a sub-label, you know all about
Right.
that, and they had gray labels instead of blue.
Yeah.
And that stuff's fantastic. Well, when you have a look, see if there's songs by Juan Victoriano, because he was
Okay.
one of the most prolific songwriters, and his songs got known by everybody. And we found him, and he was still singing. It was.
Right.
I'm remembering the trip to Mexico City. I was in Berkeley, California, and I think it was $19 to fly to Los Angeles,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 15. And there I could get a plane to Mexico City, and I had a National Duolians metal-bodied guitar with me, no case. In those days, you just get on the plane with it. I played it the whole time. Can you imagine that nowadays?
It's amazing, yeah.
And everybody loved it. The stewardess says, "Oh, great. Hey, and I had a place to sit up by the bulkhead. I wouldn't hit anybody with a peg head or anything. I was just up there with my legs up, playing the guitar." And so it became really handy to have that, because sometimes we found good musicians who played guitar, but they had broken strings, or their guitar was not in good shape. And so I gave it to them.
Yeah.
It turned out to be really handy. And also Henrietta had this formula, which was me and Peter should sing first. We'd go to a village, and then I knew we're interested in music. So we'd play a song or two, and if possible, not as good as possible. So then, oh, we can do better than that. Hey, give a listen. That was the trick.
So that was something that Henrietta
Yeah.
taught you, Henrietta Yurchenko?
We just know. I mean, in retrospect, I realized that's what it was. I mean,
Yeah.
how good were we? Well, okay, you know. Fast forward to the year 2000, 2001, and I am in Los Angeles visiting the home of a student of the brother of my principal North Indian classical music teacher who's come to America for a while.
Mhm.
And the host knew exactly how to get him to sing. He's an amazing singer, but sometimes, I'm not in the mood right now. He would sing deliberately wrong. And he said, no, it should be like this. And then we had at least a half an hour of just the most beautiful music. You'd fall for it every time.
That's great.
Yeah.
So one thing that I wanted to touch on, because I know in recent days you've been recording as a duo. You've been recording some of Jody's songs that you wrote, Jody. So talk a little bit about your songwriting and how it's related to all these musical traditions that you've studied.
Thank you for asking about that. Yeah, I've been composing, starting, a few here and there. I never could finish a song. I could make a couple of tunes and they were okay. And then one day it occurred to me that I was trying to write a good song. And that was preventing me from finishing them. This is so stupid. In what field, what craft do you expect to turn out something that's even viable after being at it for 3 weeks? And somehow, in music, you think, oh, I'm going to write a tune and write it, oh, I want it to be really good. I want other people to learn it. Hey, you're a novice.
Yeah.
So I changed my goals to composing something with a beginning and a middle and an end. That's good enough. And so I made some tunes and some songs that were good enough. And then they started getting better as I learned the craft just by doing it. And I used to get the same comment no matter what song or tune I was playing of my own. And it was, oh, did you make that up? And then it changed to, where did you learn that?
Mm-hmm.
Then I knew. Okay, now I know this craft. And the comments I'm getting now is that my songs sound like they always existed, which is they sound like traditional music. I don't know anything else really. I couldn't write jazz. I don't know. I don't have the background. But what comes in goes out. Whatever you listen to. So it I absorbed it all, and so in my writing, it sounds like old music. And it's reminding me of a story that Utah Phillips told me. He composed The Green Rolling Hills of West Virginia. And there's a line in there, the green rolling hills of West Virginia are the nearest place to heaven that I know. Eventually that song got so well known that the West Virginia license plate said almost heaven, which isn't really true if you've ever been there. It's beautiful, but and so he was back there many years later after composing it and a lot of people recording it. And there was a gathering and some people were singing that song. And somebody who didn't know, about it said, wait, what's about that song? Where does it come from? And they said, oh, it's always existed. We don't know who made it. It's an old song. And someone who was with Bruce Phillips, he said, oh, no.
Yeah.
Much, much better this way. That's a supreme compliment. So, about 10 years ago, I released an album of my own songs and I think one tune. uh, called Wonders and Signs. Kate is singing on that. And I don't think you're playing on that one, are you?
No.
And then I did another one just before the pandemic came. I was able to finish mixing and recording. And before all of that, and Kate sings a bit. She's playing a lot of guitar on it. And I had my health was I was worried. I'm fine now, absolutely fine.
Great.
But I
Good to
I
hear.
have lost three close friends. They died within the space of a year. Very close friends. I
Sorry to hear
started
that.
thinking I'm next.
Yeah.
And so what is unfinished? I've got all these songs. They are finished and no one has heard them. I want to record these songs. Well, we're talking about a repertoire of close to 50 numbers. And I wanted to do a lot of them with a band, and I couldn't ask anybody to learn that much music. So I created 3 different bands of different musicians. Some were local, some were traveling through. I did one in June, one in July, one in August, something like that.
Hmm.
And you put it out as a double CD.
Yeah, it came out as a double CD it's a lot to listen to.
Yeah.
But even my sister likes it. I have 3 sisters, and one of them's a big fan. The other one's close to being a fan, and the third one, not so much.
She likes me very much. But
She likes you, and she likes me.
But
But our music isn't her cup of tea. She's a lot younger than me, and but she loves this double CD of Jody's.
I call it Dreams from the Overlook.
Hmm.
One thing I was doing to improve my health, I lost 50 pounds, close to it, was taking long daily walks.
Yeah.
And I discovered a place in San Francisco. It's a cemetery overlook. It's an old military cemetery. It's the only cemetery in San Francisco. 100 years ago or so, all the bodies were moved out of all the cemeteries and reburied in a town called Colma to the south of San Francisco, because San Francisco is the top of a peninsula and it's small, and there was no place to build houses for more people to live.
Mm.
And they got to the military cemetery and they said, we're not moving these people.
Yeah.
Forget it. And it slopes down to the water, and it's where families came, to visit. And it's an amazing place. It's a very high elevation. I walk uphill about a mile to get to it. See, there are hills in San Francisco in our neighborhood. There's one. And even though you can hear the traffic leading up to the Golden Gate Bridge, it's quiet. It's very, very serene there. You can hear the birds. And I'd walk up there many times. Meanwhile, I would say 25% of the repertoire on that double CD, I dreamed. I didn't make it up while awake or with an instrument in my hand. The main body of, the chorus or the shape of the words, I would dream, and I wake up and remember enough of it to put it all together. So I call it Dreams from the Overlook.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And
well, we're coming up on our time, I'm afraid. It's I could talk to you, both of you, all day and learn more and more about music and about your careers and your songwriting. But I do think that we've come to the end of the time that we have. So I just want to thank you both, Jody Stecker, Kate Brislin, for your concert, first of all, which was beautiful, and for this wonderful interview that has gone so in depth into so many different topics.
Thank you. It's been a delight talking with you. You're a wonderful interviewer.
Well, thank you so much.
So
Yeah.
yes, and we're so pleased that we were invited to make the video. It was just very. We were in a good mood doing it. We were so happy to be asked. You can tell that we were in a good mood.
Yeah, it came out, and it came out in your performance, certainly.
Yeah, I mean,
So
there's a few old mistakes in there, but
nobody noticed.
no, it's all right.
All right.
All right then.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, Steve.
Bye.
Bye-bye.